My dear brothers and sisters, how many times have we raised our hands to Allah while still holding on to a sense of control within ourselves? We make dua, but deep inside, we still feel that we can manage, that we can fix things, that we are strong enough on our own. And then we wonder why our hearts feel distant, why our duas feel heavy, why the response seems delayed. What if the very thing standing between us and the acceptance of our dua is not a lack of words, but a lack of true weakness before Allah? Because the essence of dua is not in the perfection of what you say, it is in the state of your heart when you say it. Allah does not want your strength, He does not need your plans, He does not require your perfection. He wants to see you come to Him broken, completely aware that you have no power and no ability except through Him. The more you feel your need for Allah, the more you realize your dependence on Him, the closer you are to the acceptance of your dua. It is that moment when your heart says, "Why Allah, I cannot do this without you," that your dua begins to transform. So the key, my dear brothers and sisters, is not to stand before Allah as someone who has it all together, but to stand before Him as someone who has nothing without Him. To strip away the illusion of control, to let your heart humble itself, to allow your tears to speak before your tongue does. Because when you place your weakness sincerely in front of Allah, you are not losing anything. You are unlocking the very door through which your duas are answered. The more you recognize your weakness, your complete dependence on Allah, the closer your dua moves toward acceptance. And this is something that transforms the entire way a believer understands their relationship with their Lord, because in this life we are constantly taught to appear strong, to have control, to show confidence, to rely on our abilities, our plans, our intelligence, and even when we turn to Allah, sometimes we unknowingly carry that same mindset into our acts of worship, into our dua, as if we are simply asking for assistance, while still believing we hold the foundation of control within ourselves. But the reality of servitude, the reality of being a true servant of Allah, is something entirely different. It is the realization that you own nothing, you control nothing, and you are nothing without Him. And when this realization settles deeply into your heart, your dua is no longer just words you say. It becomes a state you live in, a posture of the soul that reflects complete humility and need. And this is why you find that the most powerful duas in the Quran are not long, complicated, or filled with elaborate expressions, but they are deeply rooted in humility and need. Look at the dua of Prophet Musa, peace be upon him, when he said, "My Lord, indeed I am, for whatever good you would send down to me in desperate need." He did not list 10 different requests. He did not present a structured plan. He simply expressed his state, his need, his weakness, and that moment of vulnerability opened doors for him that he could never have imagined. And this teaches us that Allah is not looking at how eloquent your dua is. He is looking at how truthful your heart is, how aware you are of your dependence on Him, how sincerely you acknowledge that without Him, you have nothing to hold on to. Because when a person truly recognizes their weakness, it strips away arrogance in all its subtle forms. It removes that hidden sense of self-reliance that often blocks the heart from fully connecting with Allah, and instead replaces it with a softness, a humility, a quiet desperation that draws a person closer to their Lord. And this is why sometimes Allah puts us in situations where we feel completely helpless, where every plan fails, where every door seems closed, where even the people we relied on are no longer able to help us, not because Allah wants to punish us, but because He wants to bring us back to this reality, this truth, that He alone is the one who controls, He alone is the one who gives, He alone is the one who responds. And in those moments, when you stand in prayer, when you raise your hands, when your voice trembles and your heart feels heavy, and you say, "Ya Allah," from a place of true need, that is when your dua carries a different weight. It is no longer just a request. It becomes an act of servitude in its purest form, because you are acknowledging your weakness while affirming His strength. You are admitting your deficiency while recognizing His perfection. And that is beloved to Allah, because Allah loves when His servant turns to Him with humility, when they break in front of Him, when they let go of the illusion of control and simply say, "I need you." And the more you allow yourself to feel that need, the more present your heart becomes in dua. Because one of the greatest barriers between us and the acceptance of our dua is heedlessness, when the tongue moves but the heart is distant, when we repeat words but do not feel them, when we ask but do not truly believe in our need for what we are asking. But when you recognize your weakness, when you reflect on your limitations, your helplessness, your inability to control even the smallest aspects of your life, suddenly your dua becomes alive. Every word carries meaning, every tear carries sincerity, every pause is filled with presence. And this is why the scholars always emphasized that the state of the heart is more important than the quantity of words, because a short dua made with a broken heart can be more powerful than a long dua made with a distracted heart. And that brokenness, that humility, that feeling of need, it is not something to be ashamed of. It is actually a gift, because it is the very thing that connects you to Allah in the most intimate way. It is the doorway through which your dua ascends. And when you begin to understand this, you stop seeing your weakness as something negative, and you start seeing it as a means of closeness to Allah. And subhanallah, when a person consistently places their weakness before Allah, it changes not only their dua, but their entire outlook on life, because they no longer rely on their own strength, they no longer feel crushed by their limitations, they no longer panic when things do not go according to their plans, because their heart is anchored in the one who controls everything. And this brings a sense of peace, a calmness, a submission that cannot be explained, because you know that even in your weakness, you are connected to the one who is all-powerful, and that connection is enough. And perhaps one of the most beautiful aspects of recognizing your dependence on Allah is that it makes your relationship with Him deeply personal, because you begin to turn to Him not only in times of crisis, but in every moment, in every decision, in every fear, in every hope. You begin to realize that you need Him not just for the big things, but for the smallest details of your life. And this constant awareness transforms your heart into a heart that is always in a state of dua, even when your lips are silent, because your existence itself becomes an expression of need. And this is why the more a person grows in their understanding of Allah, the more they grow in humility, the more they recognize their own weakness. Because the more you know about the greatness of Allah, the more you become aware of your own limitations. And this awareness does not push you away from Allah. It draws you closer. It makes you more sincere, more present, more connected. Because you are no longer pretending to be strong. You are no longer trying to maintain an image. You are simply standing before your Lord as you truly are, a servant in need of His mercy. And when that sincerity is present, when that humility fills your heart, when that recognition of weakness becomes real, your dua is no longer just words. It becomes a reflection of your servitude, a manifestation of your relationship with Allah. And that is when you begin to see the beauty of dua, not just as a means of asking, but as a means of connecting, of returning, of finding yourself in the presence of your Lord. And that is a gift greater than the answer itself, because the journey of turning to Allah with your weakness is in itself a form of acceptance, a form of mercy, a form of closeness that changes you from within, softens your heart, strengthens your faith, and anchors your soul in a way that nothing else can. Allah responds to a heart that is broken, sincere, and fully humbled before Him, not a heart that is relying on its own strength. And this is something we often struggle to truly internalize, because we live in a world that constantly teaches us to depend on ourselves, to trust our abilities, to believe that success comes from our effort alone. And while effort is part of our responsibility, the heart must never attach itself to that effort as the source of results, because the moment the heart leans on itself, even slightly, it begins to lose that pure connection with Allah. And dua at its core is not simply about asking. It is about recognizing who you are in relation to your Lord. It is about standing before Him with a heart that knows it is weak, that knows it is in need, that knows it cannot survive, cannot succeed, cannot find peace without Him. And when we speak about a broken heart, we are not speaking about a heart that is hopeless, but a heart that is stripped of arrogance, stripped of pride, stripped of self-sufficiency, a heart that has come to the realization that everything it once relied upon can fail, that people can leave, that plans can collapse, that strength can fade, but Allah remains constant. And it is often through life's tests that Allah brings a person to this state. Because as long as a person feels strong within themselves, they will never fully experience the sweetness of turning to Allah with complete sincerity. And this is why sometimes the very difficulties we wish to escape are the same paths that lead us to the most sincere du'as we have ever made. Because sincerity is not something that can be faked. It is not something that can simply be spoken into existence. It is something that emerges from a heart that has been humbled, a heart that has tasted its own limitations, a heart that has realized that it has nowhere else to turn except to Allah. And when that sincerity is present, even the simplest words carry immense weight. Even a quiet La Allah, whispered in the darkness, can reach the heavens in a way that long, eloquent speeches cannot. Because Allah does not look at the length of your dua. He looks at the truth within it. He looks at whether your heart is present, whether it is fully turned to Him, whether it is free from distractions, free from reliance on anything else. And this is why you find that the moments when your heart feels most broken are often the moments when your connection with Allah feels the strongest, because in those moments all barriers are removed, all illusions of control disappear, and you stand before Allah as you truly are, with no pretenses, no filters, no false sense of independence, just a servant in need of mercy. And there is something incredibly powerful about that state, because it is beloved to Allah that His servant returns to Him in humility, that His servant calls upon Him with a heart that is fully aware of its dependence. And sometimes we misunderstand what it means for Allah to respond to our dua. We think that response is limited to receiving exactly what we asked for, exactly when we asked for it. But the reality is much deeper, because when a heart is sincere, when it is humble, when it is broken in the right way, Allah responds in ways that go beyond our limited understanding. Sometimes He gives you exactly what you asked for. Sometimes He delays it because He knows the perfect time. Sometimes He replaces it with something better. And sometimes He simply gives you a sense of peace, a contentment in your heart that makes you realize that what you were asking for is no longer what you need. And all of these are forms of response. All of these are manifestations of His wisdom and mercy. But the key is not in controlling the outcome. The key is in perfecting the state of your heart when you make dua, because that is the part you are responsible for. That is the part you have control over. And when you focus on bringing sincerity into your dua, when you focus on humbling yourself before Allah, when you allow your heart to truly feel its need, you begin to experience dua in a completely different way. It is no longer just a means to an end. It becomes an act of worship that brings you closer to Allah regardless of the outcome. And this is why the scholars would say that sometimes Allah withholds what you ask for, because He loves to hear your voice. He loves to see you return to Him again and again. He loves the state of humility that you are in when you call upon Him, because that state is more valuable than the thing you are asking for. And when you begin to understand this, you stop measuring the acceptance of your dua only by the results you see, and you start recognizing the deeper changes within your heart, the increase in your faith, the softness in your heart, the closeness you feel to Allah, and you realize that these are all signs that your dua is being answered in ways you may not have noticed before. And the more you train your heart to let go of its reliance on itself, the more you begin to feel a sense of freedom, because self-reliance, when it replaces reliance on Allah, becomes a burden. It creates anxiety, it creates fear, it creates constant worry about outcomes. But when your heart is attached to Allah, when it knows that He is the one in control, when it trusts His wisdom, that burden is lifted, and you find a calmness that is not dependent on circumstances, a peace that is not shaken by delays, a certainty that Allah's plan is always good, even if you do not understand it in the moment. And this does not mean that you stop making effort. It does not mean that you become passive. Rather, it means that your effort is accompanied by trust in Allah, by complete reliance on Him, and your heart does not attach itself to the effort, but to the one who controls the results. And this balance is what strengthens your dua, because you are doing what you can while fully acknowledging that what you can do is limited, and that true power belongs only to Allah. And when a person reaches this level of understanding, their dua becomes consistent, it becomes sincere, it becomes deeply rooted in their relationship with Allah. They do not only turn to Him in times of crisis, but in every moment, because they recognize that their need for Allah is constant, not temporary, and this constant turning, this constant humility, this constant sincerity is what makes their heart alive, what keeps their connection with Allah strong, what brings blessings into their life in ways that cannot be measured. And perhaps one of the most beautiful outcomes of this is that you begin to find comfort in turning to Allah itself, regardless of what you receive, because the act of making dua becomes a source of peace, a moment of connection, an opportunity to be in the presence of your Lord, to speak to Him, to pour your heart out to Him. And that in itself becomes enough for you, because you realize that the greatest gift is not always in what you are given, but in the one you are connected to. And when your heart reaches that state, when it is broken in humility, sincere in its turning, and free from reliance on itself, your dua is no longer just words, it becomes a reflection of your servitude, a sign of your closeness to Allah, a testimony of your faith. And that is the kind of dua that is never wasted, never ignored, never lost, because it comes from a heart that has truly understood what it means to stand before Allah as a servant in need of His mercy.